welcome to the Rebuilding Business After COVID-19 online event and panel discussion, hosted by Cherie Blair, CBEQC, founder of the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, in collaboration with CW Cambridge Wireless and supported by Synergy Solutions. This webinar, the first in a series of 4, is focused on how we as a community can better support women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries create businesses that are sustainable and thrive in the new digital economy. The webinar will last about 1.5 hours, and you will hear from esteemed speakers whose organizations are leading the way in delivering initiatives that are positively impacting women entrepreneurs globally. So just a bit of housekeeping for you. If your screen freezes, please just refresh your page. If you have any questions for the speakers, use the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you have any problems, you can use our live support feature, which appears as a small blue box on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. We would really love you to get involved in the conversation. So if you're sharing this event on social media, please use the hashtag WeDigi2020. The Cherie Blair Foundation for Women has supported over 160,000 women entrepreneurs in more than 100 countries since 2008. In addition, the foundation launched the 100,000 Women campaign in Davos in January 2020, which I had the privilege to be able to attend, with a compelling vision to support a further 100,000 women entrepreneurs globally by 2022. CW Cambridge Wireless is a not-for-profit, members-owned organization with a mission to help our members network, learn, and grow, with significant expertise in driving innovation through collaborative working, sharing knowledge, and building connections, leveraging over 1,000 technology companies ranging from major network operators, device manufacturers, through to innovative startups and universities. We are pleased to have with us today Sanda Ojiambo from the UN Global Compact, Wendy Talaki from Wi-Fi at the World Bank Group, Angela Baker from Qualcomm, and you will have the opportunity to listen to an opening address from our host, Cherie Blair, CBEQC, and a fireside chat between Cherie Blair and Nicola Mendelsohn, CBE from Facebook, as well as join our online panel discussion. We have attendees joining us from all over the world, so welcome. My name is Ola Rugbu, and I'm the CEO and founder of Synergy Solutions, a specialist consultancy practice focused on helping companies embrace digital technology safely whilst remaining resilient and responsive to the rapidly changing environment. I'm also on the board of CW Cambridge Wireless, and I'll be chairing the event for today. This event is focused on how we as a community can come together, share knowledge, best practice and toolkits, and better support women entrepreneurs to create businesses that are able to successfully operate in the new normal. Research conducted by the OECD found that 1/3 of SMEs fear that they'll be out of business without further support within 1 month, and up to 50% within 3 months. This is alarming. Addressing some of the gender-based barriers that women entrepreneurs face is vital, such as access to finance, cultural perceptions of women's roles, as well as digital skills gap, whilst providing them with the practical tools, networks, and support needed to rebuild their business following one of the severest adverse global events for many years, which is COVID-19. With this in mind, I am truly honored and privileged to be able to introduce this incredible woman who I'm sure needs no introduction, but I'll do my best. A leading Queen's Counsel, wife of the former British Prime Minister and committed campaigner for women's rights. Cherie Blair CBEQC set up the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women in 2008 to help women build small and growing businesses in low and middle income countries so that they can contribute to their economies and have a stronger voice in their societies. Cherie is actively involved in the foundation, generously and tirelessly giving her time and resources to ensure its success, traveling internationally to visit projects, donors, and attend conferences. Cherie is an ambassador for women entrepreneurs everywhere, encouraging other non-profit corporations and governments to do more to support women business owners. Cherie was awarded a CBE in the 2013 New Year's Honours List for services to women's issues and to charities in both the UK and overseas. So I would like you to join me in welcoming Cherie Blair, CBE QC, our host for today, and the founder of the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, who will provide her opening address. Welcome, Cherie Blair.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful welcome. And I'm so delighted to be here at this critical time for women in business. We know that business across the world has been devastated by the social and economic consequences of COVID-19. And it's radically changing the way we live and work and pushing us further into a digital world. So to survive, businesses must move into the digital economy. In low and middle income countries, mobile technology is proving to be a lifeline. It's helping businesses to adapt the way they trade, interact with customers, bank, and market their products. But not everyone is ready or able to embrace the new digital reality. Before COVID-19, women were already disadvantaged in business, least likely to have access to technology and knowledge, more often denied the finance, skills, networks, and support to enable success, and dealing with competing priorities like a grossly unequal share of unpaid domestic labor. Now women face an additional burden of more unpaid care work and home schooling. We're simply not going to see economic recovery if women remain disadvantaged. The Cherie Blair Foundation for Women supports women in low and middle income countries to start, grow, and sustain successful businesses. We recently asked the women on our programs how the crisis was impacting them. 3/4 said they urgently want support to adapt their businesses to the new realities, to develop resilience strategies, to have more mentoring, and to learn about digital marketing, e-commerce, and diversification. Where there is disruption, there is opportunity for positive change. Digital can not only help build more resilient businesses, but also a more equal future. The foundation recognized early on technology's potential to accelerate progress towards women's economic equality. Mobile and the internet can help democratize access to skills and training. Mobile banking increases access to finance. But there's still a long way to go, and we have to work together to make sure that women are not excluded in the first place. Tech-enabled services are at the heart of the Foundation's delivery model. We use apps and online platforms to deliver impactful training and support. Our tools help tens of thousands of women a year access the business skills, financial knowledge, and confidence, the markets, and the networks they need. Tech also enables rapid adaptation. Together with Synergy Solutions, Cambridge Wireless, and King's College London, we just launched a new free business resilience training to combat COVID's impacts. In under 6 weeks, almost 1,000 women have joined the course. Knowing that practical one-to-one support is absolutely crucial during a crisis, existing partners like PayPal and Marsh & McLennan have increased their investment in our flagship business mentoring program, and we're seeking new corporate partners to expand it further. And with the support of DHL, we're adapting our mobile learning app, Her Venture, to add a new e-commerce model. Positive change is possible, but achieving it has to be a conscious, collaborative decision. So today, I'm so excited. We're going to hear from some amazing speakers who are leading change in different ways and on a significant scale. We'll hear about emerging trends and best practice. We hope that this will help to provoke thoughts, actions, and collaborations that can help women entrepreneurs adapt to the world post-COVID. We value your ideas to ask questions here and to continue the conversation and connect with each other on Twitter using the hashtag @WeDidG2020. But first, let's hear from some of the women we support about how they're acting on them.
Hi, I'm Ene Addison. I own Ene Naturals Nigeria Limited.
Hello, I am Natalie Cervantes, the co-founder of Atelier Organic Joyas.
My name is Tele Ogundipe. I'm into food processing and packaging.
I am the co-founder of a platform called Resolve 360, which is a legal tech company that is making dispute resolution accessible to everybody at their fingertips.
I run Flow Business Support, where we provide funds to train female entrepreneurs.
My name is Hanan Guefel. I'm based in the Middle East, in Cairo, Egypt. I'm a physician working in early detection of breast diseases.
This global pandemic presents an extremely challenging time for women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs are often discriminated against when attempting to access credit and grants.
Prior to COVID, we were using a lot of fundraising and sales to get an income revenue stream. Right now, we have had to relook at how we can continue on as a company.
Many women are earning practically nothing right now because most of these businesses in the informal sector are not structured to function online.
Women has a double burden working with the student or the children at homes and doing her business also.
Trying to split the time between the house, the work, my husband's work time, my work time. It's really not so easy when I need to actually, change all the business around.
This pandemic does offer an opportunity for a business like mine to make resolving from home the new normal. But the road ahead is still filled with more challenges, especially when it comes to being a woman entrepreneur and coming from a field which is otherwise male dominated.
And as we all know, we do not have old girls club for women where we can run to get support in cash or in kind.
As women, we are building naturally to handle pressure. It's like labor pain. You know it's coming and there's nothing you can do but face it. So as an entrepreneur, keeping positive is key.
I have to move everything to be online, which also affects the marketing, affects the pricing, and that's a lot of work. It's complicated. It's like learning a whole new field.
I believe that technical assistance and support at this point in time will help a lot of businesses to stay afloat and keep alive and continue.
Work with local partners to provide tailored training, guidance, and other kind of support for women entrepreneurs. As a result, they can transform their businesses, drive growth, inspire others in their community.
My business is surviving because I was be able to redoing all the marketing plan by introduce my product to a new market using technologies of information and principally e-commerce. Thank you so much.
And continue to help build capacity in this trying time, and also continuously help us to connect with other women out there so we can understand how other women feel about it. Thank you.
And these visionary leaders with all their years of experience, we need these educators, social workers, healthcare professionals, and kind women to come together and create real change.
That was an incredibly impactful video. And now we can see all the things that we're talking about and hear the real stories of these women entrepreneurs. And some of the statements that really resonated with me were, many women are not earning anything. Women have a double burden of doing the work in their home and doing their business. We don't have an old girls club for women where we can run to get support. And moving everything online is challenging. So We need everybody to come together, and these are the real voices of these women who are looking for this support. So this forum is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to get that support out there. And this is why this community of collaboration and co-working is going to be absolutely fundamental in getting that support over to these women entrepreneurs. On that note, I am delighted to welcome back Cherie Blair and also introduce Nicola Mendelsohn, CBE, who's the VP for EMEA for Facebook, for a fireside chat, during which we'll learn about how Facebook is using data to get the right types of help and support to small business owners and specifically women entrepreneurs. So just a bit of information about Nicola. Nicola Mendelsohn is currently the Vice President for Europe, Middle East and Africa to Facebook, a role she's held since 2013. She serves on the UK government's Industrial Strategy Council, the Mayor of London's Business Advisory Board, and in September 2014, she became a non-executive director of Diageo. She and her husband are also co-presidents of the charity Norwood. In 2015, Nicola was awarded a Commander of the British Empire for services to the creative industries in the UK. From 2012 to 2018, she was the co-chair of the Creative Industries Council, alongside Secretaries of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and BEIS, a joint forum between the UK creative industries and government. In 2019, Nicola founded and launched the Follicular Lymphoma Foundation, a charity focused solely on raising funds to help thousands of people living with follicular lymphoma to live well and get well. Her greatest joy in life comes from her husband, John, and her 4 children, Gabby, Danny, Sam, and Zach. So welcome back, Cherie, and over to you, Nicola.
Well, thank you, Olu. And Nicola, it's lovely to see you again, albeit virtually. And all I can say as a mother of 4 children myself, wait till you get grandchildren, even better. It's very nice for me. Today, I'm the interviewer, and you have to sit in the hot seat. I hope you enjoyed our video. I loved hearing the authentic voices of our women business owners. And I wondered if what they were saying and the challenges that they voiced also show up in what you at Facebook are experiencing. And I wondered if you could start by sharing insights into what Facebook has been seeing in relation to women entrepreneurs and the challenges they're facing in low and middle income countries during this terrible pandemic.
Yeah, so first off, I'm absolutely thrilled and honoured to be here today. Olu, thank you for that much too generous introduction. And Cherie, it's wonderful to see you. I loved watching that video, and it just made me realise how much I miss the old world, where I would be travelling every week and I would be especially going out. And I made it a priority since I joined Facebook that I would always go and do a women event wherever I was in the world. And it was usually meeting with small business entrepreneurs that were women, and some of the best days in the job. But so many of the things that they talked about were exactly the things that we are seeing as well. And I think they talked about it far more eloquently than I will. But this has been a challenging time for business in general, but it's been an even more challenging time for women in business in general, in particular female entrepreneurs at this time. We're seeing around the world that a greater number of female-led businesses are more likely to be impacted. And there's so many reasons for that. One is in part due to the nature of some of the businesses that we see that women are in, especially around lifestyle, well-being, hospitality, travel, tourism, being very severely impacted, personal grooming, that whole area. We're seeing also the challenges that we've always seen, but are even worse in this period with women's access to capital, finding funding, emergency funding. It's always been difficult at the best of times. It's become even more so right now. And then we heard it on the video, the number of women that are also having to deal with the challenging circumstances of working out how you do domestic responsibilities within the family as well. And that's putting on an extra strain as well. So so many aspects coming in, but all in all, it says that this is going to be a very, very challenging time. And I wonder, and I'm most worried about actually, that so much of the great work that's been done in the past around closing that gender equality gap is actually going to broaden out unless we kind of really put measures in place now to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Well, absolutely. Are you seeing new trends or changes in the way that businesses are using digital tools to support their business? And do you think there's an opportunity there to shift to allowing women to have more of a use with digital more, you know, give women a bit more access at this time?
Yes, definitely. And actually, our research has been telling us over the last couple of years that women are more likely to use the Facebook family of apps and services more than men. So that's good, because that's a competitive advantage, especially in a world where more and more people are starting to shop and think about how they can access things online. Just to give a couple of examples, we've seen a massive increase, a doubling in the use of messaging and video chats. And you probably all think about how you've been communicating during this period as well. It's really been different. And we've helped and created products during this time to enable that to happen further. So for example, on WhatsApp, you can now do a group chat of 8 people. That wasn't possible before. And similarly, we're seeing small business owners really jumping in and you seeing those trends and then responding to customers in the same way. So I'll give you an example. There's a fantastic restaurant run by an amazing woman in Thailand. And when the lockdown happened, obviously you couldn't get into the restaurant. So how do you do a home delivery service? The restaurant's called Penguin Eats Shabu. And so she put out a note on Messenger, anybody want anything? Within a minute, 350 people went, yep, I'm hungry, I need X, Y, or Z. So it went so well. She put a second one out, 2,500 people signed up on Messenger to get a hot pot. And what that meant was that the business was able to transform itself, again, through creativity and innovation. She was able to bring back in the people she was employing and pay them at full wages and change the whole business to be an at-home delivery box service rather than what it had been just a few weeks before, which was a restaurant. But what she was doing specifically there was using Messenger, and then she was boosting that with ads in the local area so that it was targeted to the people to know whatever deal or meal deal she was doing at that time.
I must say that I've also found the work we've done in the foundation and in work that Qualcomm helped us with back in Malaysia. And I remember going at one time and seeing the women we were working with in Malaysia. And once we introduced them to using digital and using Facebook, the transformation that they found in their market, because so many of the women who trade locally, and that's being friends and family and maybe neighbors. Suddenly on Facebook, your neighborhood is a much wider area. And, you know, it makes such a big difference. But of course, to do that, you do need to have access to technology. You do need to have the confidence and the skills to use it, although, yeah, it's not difficult to use, but if you're uncertain about technology, it can be difficult. And these are the sort of things that we need to do more of to help women in particular who like Facebook, who feel comfortable with Facebook, use that and other tools to expand their businesses. Do you think this is also having an impact in the way they're able to manage their work-life balance, if I can put it that way? Do you see any evidence of that?
Very much so. And again, I see it from the women that I've met over the years and also the feedback that they're giving us. We're definitely seeing a shift that I think will continue post the pandemic about people working more remotely. The need to have an office might not necessarily be the case going forwards for companies whereby it's more of an office-based work. But I'm also seeing that in craft and manufacture as well. More and more people are looking at, well, do I actually need to be in a big city? Or can I reevaluate and think about, could I actually work better in an area away from the city, which is actually going to be cheaper, you know, might be easier to get other people to be employed in those areas. And I think what digital enables is that actually, as you say, your customers can be anywhere in the world. You can talk to them as though they are literally passing the shop, so to speak, on the high street, even though it's a virtual high street. And I think that's going to continue. So I think we'll see more remote work. I think we'll see more people moving outside of cities all over the world. And I think that will change the way and the nature of, if you like, presenteeism. which was always something I found quite ghastly. I think that's gone, because I think what we've also seen is that this is a period where people have been able to see that work can be done in a different way. And in many ways, you know, the world of work hasn't been reimagined for probably 100 years since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And so I think this is a wonderful opportunity. And I think this is a time that women will benefit from as well.
Well, I totally agree with you with presenteeism, by the way. It's a terrible curse in the legal profession. And yet over the last few months, we have seamlessly used tools that previously we knew about, but we didn't use very often. And now discovering actually it's not only, we're not only able to use them, but actually sometimes it's more efficient and certainly saves money for our clients. But of course, there is a problem if you're working from home and also homeschooling. And so there is a downside to all this. And as we know, all the research also shows that women are sharing that double burden more than men. And, you know, we only need to think of the things we've seen on our own television screens. It always seems to be the women reporters or the women experts who suddenly have a small child run in and demand attention. It's very rare you see the man. The one time we did see the man a few years back, of course, it was his wife who came scrambling in to rescue those. So I think this new normal needs some adaptation so that women don't actually end up doing even more work and still not getting the space for themselves and the acknowledgement of their importance in the world economy.
Do you know, I so agree with that. And we have all had a chuckle about that, haven't we, when we've seen it on the news. And I have to say, it happened to me on about week 1. I was doing a big, one of the Zoom-like thing out to the whole of EMEA, thousands of people on the call. And it was all very early days and everyone was very tense. And my 15-year-old son, Zach, came in the middle. And you have that moment going, don't be the guy that was in the news pushing the kid. Don't be that person. So I just stopped the whole call and went, what is it, Zach? What would you like to know? And he just went, Mom, I'd like you to know I've nearly finished my homework. And actually, it was a really good moment. And I got a lot of feedback after that. The fact that it had happened to me and I acted normal, because how else are you going to act with your own child? Mm-hmm. It gave permission for everybody else. And actually, I've banned people saying sorry for my child sitting with me. It's like, no, that's real life. And the more that we bring real life into our workplaces, the more authentic it is. And the more that actually it allows other people to share what's on their minds. And I think empathy is a really important part of leadership that I think hitherto has been pushed down. And I hope that we'll see many more cultures emerge out of this in the workplace, which actually has empathy at the heart. And it's interesting, I've been doing a series of interviews with different leaders of different industry and business. And the one thing they've all said at the end, what do you hope will happen as a result? They've all talked about kindness and empathy being something, community, being things that they want to hold on to. And I think that will be a good thing that comes out of this as well.
I couldn't agree more. And those values are often associated with women leaders in particular. But talking about, you know, how do we make sure, because we've seen in the past, haven't we? We know historically and now women aren't getting equal access to technology. And we need, therefore, to redress the balance. So I think Facebook are having quite a few initiatives, particularly targeted at women entrepreneurs. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that. I know you've got a She Means Business program in Nigeria, a country that we work in a lot.
Yeah, so actually, She Means Business program is something we've been running for about 5 years now. And we've now trained over 500,000 women all around the world in about 40 countries. And I've personally been to both Nigeria, Kenya and South Africa with the program. And it's amazing. In pre-COVID, we used to do in-person events, but we've always also done online learning as well. So we have a She Means Business Hub that's accessible to anyone. It talks to you about how you can set up your business online for free on both Facebook and Instagram. And then it shows you how, if you want to target and you want to do advertising for just a handful of pounds, dollars, euros, you name it, whichever currency, you can target the people that matter to you. And I'll never forget, I remember being on literally on the streets of Soweto on the cafe there. We did an event with about 20 women entrepreneurs. And I was talking to this one woman who made amazing jewelry, just the most incredible jewelry. And I said to her, oh, where's your customer base? She said, New York. Or my main customers are in New York. And you just go, how amazing. Because like even 5 years ago, that probably wouldn't have been possible. That she was having direct contact daily with these customers in New York. So that was fantastic to see. And we've also in this, so that's a program, have a look. And the other thing that we've also launched recently is a book called She Means Business. And it's all available online, it's free, and it's got lots of tips and tricks in there from some amazing female entrepreneurs about making sure that you don't go through the same battles and lessons that they went through. So I would definitely recommend looking at that as well after. But we've also made sure that we've put out there as well a number of other things for small businesses at this time as well. So we've got the She Means Business Hub, but we've also got a small business hub as well. And we've launched a number of products in order to help small businesses in the recovery at this time. So there was an ask made about, could we actually create fundraisers for small business? And in the past, we just did it for charities. So we did. We've created fundraisers for small businesses. We've created gift cards for small businesses so you can pay it forward. So if you're in a lockdown in a country, you might not be able to go to the shop or the restaurant, but you can buy a gift card, if you like, that you can then trade on and use after, and so many other areas as well. But those are just some of the things that we're doing. But do have a look and check out the hubs.
Of course, talking about gift cards and things like that, it touches on the big problem that we find all the time, which is women's access to finance for their businesses, which is very much affected by sexist assumptions that, you know, we found when we surveyed our women entrepreneurs. They still were having people saying, well, you know, where's your husband? What does he think about this? Or women really don't understand money, so we're very reluctant to lend to them. Or, you know, women just aren't aggressive enough to be successful entrepreneurs. So what do we do to help give this financial support to women, this training and skills that they need in order to gain? Because all businesses in the end, if they're going to grow, are going to need some kind of access to finance.
Yeah, I agree. And so, so there's the access to finance that you spoke about and the skills. I'll talk about both. On the access to finance, we've been trialing something in West Africa, which is an accelerator program, a 6-month program where we've been working with a variety of different businesses. And what's been great to see is it has then enabled them to go off and I think raise over $500,000 worth of finance that was much needed at that time. So have a look out for that. But on the training side and the very specific tech training, the skills and digital training about how you can market your business better, do have a look out for something that's called Boost with Facebook. And we've been training millions of small businesses around the world with this program, series of webinars. There's a hub for information as well. So do look out for that. We do it in different languages in different countries at different times on a rolling basis as well. So those are a couple of things that I think to look out for. One which hopefully you can get very quickly, and one maybe might take a little bit longer, but just to be aware that it exists.
And what about the business community in general? I mean, do you think they could do more to help women entrepreneurs?
I do, actually, I do. And I've been really inspired by some of the work that I've seen in Israel, actually, where some of the big companies work with Facebook to, if you like, adopt some smaller companies and to have the kind of CEOs and the leadership on the big companies being the mentors of those companies, which I think is a really interesting model. And I think we could see more programs like that in existence as well. So yes, I think there is more that we can all do.
Well, I'm a great believer in mentoring too. In fact, we have a very successful mentoring platform where I know Andrew and others may talk about it later, but many of our women actually don't necessarily get support from the CEOs, but we tend to look for middle managers who perhaps are more at the sort of level of business that the women are at, to help them. So anyone with over 7 years experience of business can for a year partner with a women entrepreneur, and we're in over 100 countries across the world. And for 2 hours a month, just be that, as one of our women mentees said, the invisible friend who walks with me on my journey, not to tell me what to do, but to help me work out the right solutions for my business.
Oh, I love that. I think that's absolutely wonderful. I believe in mentorship too, and sponsorship, which is even more active than mentorship. But the thing I would say on that as well is they do often come to a natural limit when you've probably got as much out of that mentor as you can. Don't be afraid of chucking your mentor at some point. Do it nicely, obviously, but you might need different things at different times. And so I agree with you, actually. Often it's more useful when you have somebody that's maybe 1 or 2 years older than you in a parallel world that can give you the best advice because they probably were living it not so long ago. But equally, you'll need a refresher at some point. Don't feel awkward. It's your business. You're in control of its destiny. And it's almost like your own little board of advisors. It needs refreshing every now and then.
Absolutely. In our scheme, it's a year's program, so that's good. But perfect. I'm afraid that we have come to the end of our chat. And I know you and I can chat forever because we actually really are friends. And so it's so lovely to see you. And we'll move on now to our panel discussion. So I'll pass back to Olu, but just to say once again, Nicola, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much for that really interesting fireside chat. So really good to see the work that Facebook is doing to support small businesses and specifically women entrepreneurs. There are a lot of questions for Nicola, but what I would like to say to you is let's save the questions. Nicola will be joining us during the panel session and you will have the opportunity to ask those questions. So now I am pleased to introduce you to Sanda Ojiambo. And Sanda, she's going to talk about the how businesses can align their operations and strategies with UN SDGs. Sanda Ojiambo is the Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact, launched in July 2000. The United Nations Global Compact is the Secretary General's strategic policy and advocacy initiative calling for the alignment of business operations and strategies with 10 universal principles in the area of human rights, labor, environmental, and anti-corruption. It also motivates companies to integrate the SDGs into their core business strategies and operations. Ms. Ojiambo brings 20 years of experience to lead the UN Global Compact. She served as Head of Sustainable Business and Social Impact at Safaricom in Kenya since 2010. And she was also the Senior Manager for Safaricom and M-Pesa Foundations, also in Kenya, during which time she led the implementation of several public-private partnership initiatives between Safaricom and the United Nations organization. So over to you, Sanda.
Thank you, Olu, and thank you very much for that kind introduction. I guess 20 is my magic number because it's just about 20 days into my new role at the UN Global Compact, and I'm truly honored to be here. So first, I have an absolute appreciation for the convening power that forums like this have in facilitating important conversations. I'm also really aware that in the last 3 months, especially in the business world, there's been so much discourse and expectations around what is called the business case for new models of economic regeneration and building back better. Those are words that I'm sure we've heard many times over. They're weighty concepts carrying the expectations of millions, possibly billions of people around the world. And so I spent some time reflecting on the concepts and the enormous task at hand and really what this means for women in business, and particularly through a UN lens. And I can't help but reflect on the possibly very simple fact that inclusive approaches and inclusive decisions lead to inclusive outcomes. And it may sound simple, but sometimes it's very complex. You know, I also acknowledge that whereas business cases are at the core of business decisions, at some point, and particularly when we have to make decisions between saving lives and saving livelihoods, as many people have done during COVID, sometimes consideration just needs to go towards looking at the role that moral and ethical leadership decisions will play, along with and above the business case. So my position is that the moral and ethical and business cases for gender equality has long been clear. We know that women's participation and leadership has proven to be essential to driving forward economic and financial importance. There's studies that show an estimated US dollars 28 trillion could be added to global GDP by 2025 through investing in gender equality. But at the same time, a statistic we've all heard, it's probably going to take us 257 years to close the gender gap. What a missed opportunity for humanity. And truly, why is this so? I think we're all aware of the distinct historical, structural, financial, regulatory, cultural and social barriers that women face. In fact, you know, we're probably at one of the most unequal moments of time in our history, across gender, across pay, across race, across income, and a whole host of other inequalities. For a moment, if I said to us, well, let's close our eyes and reflect on the distinct call to action of the Sustainable Development Goals, which was to leave nobody behind. I'm sure if we closed our eyes and thought about who has been left behind, we'd all have a woman in that image. But at the same time, we could also close our eyes and picture where the engines of economic growth lie across the world. And we'd see women at the heart of micro enterprise, small enterprise, and medium enterprise. A lot of the women, I believe, that the Cherie Blair Foundation aims to support and does support. And these are women-led, women-owned businesses that are truly driving economic growth around the world. And according to the ILO, actually, available evidence shows that women operate businesses with lower levels of capitalization and they're more reliant on self-financing. But then came COVID. And now more than ever, across every sphere, from health to the economy, security to social protection, the pandemic has exacerbated those inequalities I talked about. Interestingly, both Cherie and Nicholas spoke about the dual roles of women, something that I believe we've all faced during this pandemic. Home managers, caregivers, homeschoolers, planners, and many other things. But, you know, it's striking that I read a survey, again, from the Cherie Blair Foundation that found that in a group of 580 women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries, 93% of those who responded had already been negatively impacted by COVID-19, and 44% had ceased operations, at least temporarily. So I'm here just to really talk about some of the tools and support systems that exist for women within the UN system. About 10 years ago, the UN Global Compact and UN Women formed the Women Empowerment Principles, or WEPs as we call them. And this is a guiding tool to help women and women-led and women-owned companies and companies as a whole on how to really advance gender equality. The principles provide guidance on businesses on how to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in the workplace, in the marketplace, and in the community. Some key elements include issues such as equal pay for work of equal value, gender-responsive supply chains, and zero tolerance against sexual harassment. And I think that in this time of COVID-19, these principles will also help companies adopt an even more stronger, more robust, and more sensitive, gender-sensitive response, in particular when it comes to supporting women entrepreneurs and women-led SMEs. You know, one of the things is we do have lots of policies around the world. I think what's very important and what the Global Compact does is work with companies to ensure that these efforts don't just end in policy commitment. We're committed to driving impact and to driving outcomes. And for us, this means guiding companies towards decisions such as how you understand the structural barriers that women face in business, because it's almost really like starting a race meters behind. You know, how to tailor make your products and services to reduce barriers to entry to access. And, you know, depending on the industry, this could be mentoring programs, as we talked about earlier in the fireside chat, technical assistance, digital training. And this is really important, especially in some of the low and middle income countries where women have particularly suffered. There's also a fantastic gender gap analysis tool that I would urge you all to take just to understand what your gender equality performance looks like across the workplace. Another useful tool that we have is the Target Gender Equality Program. And that's a program of the UN Global Compact that is run in collaboration with 19 of our local networks in countries as diverse as Bangladesh, India, Spain, Japan, Poland, and Kenya. We launched this earlier this year to really support a cohort of companies to set and meet ambitious targets for women's representation and leadership, starting with boards and executive management programs. And as we continue to grow this program, I'm really hopeful that we can challenge leadership and companies to set, stick to, and meet ambitious targets for women representation. So let me just reflect on that weighty concept again about building back better. And what does this mean in the context of COVID and for women-led, women-owned businesses? Around the world, billions of dollars in economic stimulus packages are being announced worldwide. Now, we just need to work with decision makers and policymakers to ensure that these funds are distributed in an inclusive manner. I think it's very important to consider what access to finance should look like, what inclusive supply chains should look like, and what empowering entrepreneurship should really look like. And I personally want to invite all women business owners and business leaders to join the Global Compact, because we truly believe that this crisis is an opportunity to tap into our full potential, increase our impact on the world, and truly support and promote women entrepreneurs in business. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for that, Sandra. That was really insightful. So just a couple of questions for me then. So you talk about the need to move away from just being policy focused, so having great policies, but not necessarily reflecting that within the organization. So can you talk about some of the specific challenges that businesses are facing when they put in place the US SDG?
Right. So, I mean, the SDGs are truly a set of both aspirational and inspirational goals. But, you know, around the world, I think a lot of businesses ask how. How do you take these goals and make them make business sense? You know, one of the key challenges is, for example, putting a business lens to what it means to work, to see the business opportunity in accelerating goals in health, in education, and in agriculture. But, you know, one of the lessons that I think we've all seen around the COVID response and recovery period is businesses were able to pivot. We saw businesses shift resources, shift supply chains to actually dive right into the core of the health crisis and respond. You know, we saw supply chains being shifted. We saw human resources being shifted. And, you know, at the end of the day, this was not philanthropy. I think the shift that we saw in business was business doing responsible business. So, you know, it didn't have to take a crisis to demonstrate that the SDGs make business sense, but that is really it. The call to action for the business sector around the Sustainable Development Goals is to identify business opportunities to drive forward societal goals. So I'm a firm believer in the fact that business runs on three elements: principles, purpose, and profit. Philanthropic responses are great. They will not drive forward the transformation and the promise of the SDGs. And so it really takes a business lens to understand and see the business opportunities for the SDGs.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Sandra. Okay, so Sandra will also be joining us during the panel discussion. So you will have the opportunity to ask some questions for her. So keep your questions coming. And we're now going to move on to our next speaker, Wendy Talaki. So I'm pleased to welcome Wendy Talaki, who will talk about the work undertaken to help women entrepreneurs build back better. So Wendy Talaki is head of the WIFI Secretariat, housed in the World Bank Group. The Secretariat is dedicated to advancing the global agenda on women entrepreneurship through learning, advocacy, and partnerships. It also supports the WIFI Governing Committee in the allocation and supervision of WIFI funding in collaboration with implementing partners and other stakeholders. Ms. Talaki joined WIFI in May 2019. Prior to that, she worked with the International Finance Corporation, leading numerous activities and initiatives focused on small and medium enterprise development in emerging markets around the world. I would like you to join me in welcoming Wendy Talaki. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Olu, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the Cherie Blair Foundation and Cambridge Wireless for inviting me to speak today. I've been such an admirer of the pioneering work that the foundation does to support women entrepreneurs around the world, and obviously it's a topic close to my heart. So it's been delightful to hear the previous speakers talk about this important topic and share our experiences as well. As they've noted, with the COVID crisis, we're confronting a massive multidimensional challenge. And even though the healthcare crisis is a tragedy on a massive scale, it's really the economic and social disruptions that are going to spare no one. And the long-term effects will be profound for all of us. But, you know, in the work that we're doing in emerging markets, working with women, working with small business owners, the challenges are really compounded. And as we've watched how the world has changed over the last 3 months, it's really given us pause to think about what we can do more to find the opportunities to support these women and find those green shoots that will help us build back better. So I'm really delighted to be here to talk about some of our experiences, what we're seeing. The organization I lead, the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, where I lead the Secretariat, is housed at the World Bank. And it works intensively with 6 multilateral development banks to support women entrepreneurs. And our programs so far will be operating in about 50 countries, and that number might expand. So let me just get the clicker. So this network of implementing partners gives us an incredible window on the impacts of COVID on women entrepreneurs in every region of the world, including such disparate places as Yemen, Uzbekistan, Honduras, Egypt, Cote d'Ivoire, Vietnam, Mozambique. So we're really working everywhere and in very difficult climates. We have always taken what we like to call an ecosystem approach to serving the needs of women entrepreneurs, recognizing that access to finance is just one of many constraints women face. They also face constraints with access to markets, technology, mentoring, and networks. And so we've allocated about $250 million to work with banks, investment funds, accelerators, training organizations to support women entrepreneurs. And we expect that to catalyze about $2.6 billion in funding and support for women around the world. We know that the inequalities women face are profound, and that if women and men operated equally in the economy, the global wealth could increase by 172 trillion. It's an amazing opportunity. But women face constraints on the legal side, where they have 3/4 of the rights of men in economic rights in emerging markets. They face cultural norms and systemic barriers, and they face other gaps. So for many women, entrepreneurship is a really important path to economic empowerment, and that's what we're really focused on. In this time with COVID, we see women facing very, very severe challenges. Entrepreneurship is a path of choice for many, but it's also a path of need for others. And they face a 1.5 trillion financing gap, and women only receive 1% of purchases in global value chains. So there's really significant gaps in the way that they operate. And because of these gaps, women businesses tend to be smaller, less formal, and have less profitability, which means at a time like this, they're more vulnerable to volatility. However, we also know that women-owned businesses can be more agile. They're more financially prudent, and that is really important right now in what we see and the way we see women responding to the crisis. Even though what we've seen from past crises is that women have been more affected because of their financial vulnerabilities and social vulnerabilities. In COVID, they're particularly hurt because of their emphasis and their strengths in the service and trade sectors, which are most affected right now. And so we've seen in a recent survey of 6 African countries that in, for example, Uganda, 61% of women-led firms have no sales now. And that's versus 22% of male-owned firms that have no sales now. So the decline in sales is precipitous for women. And we also see similar information in business closures where significantly more women's businesses are closed already due to COVID than male-owned businesses. So we're seeing some distressing information, but the important thing is we're seeing more and more women close the digital gaps, reaching out for mentoring networks, and we see that happening at higher rates than we see with men, and being more involved in training programs and programs that will help them pivot. And this pivot is really the essential part of what we're seeing. Of what we're seeing happen, because we see a few percentage of women planning to sell online. The ones who are already selling online are not expecting a downturn in sales, although there's obviously many who have to make that transition still. But what is really interesting is businesses like we have an example of online in Pakistan, and you can see the picture here, which is a online tutoring program that used to have classes in person and have now migrated their whole business model into a digital format, which creates huge opportunities given the schooling crisis that's happening around the world. So we see women taking advantage of these kinds of opportunities to migrate their businesses. A couple of key things for moving forward. We work with many banks, and we work with them to improve their focus on women and to do more to lend to women. And we work with venture capital funds and accelerators also. And it's very important that they focus their gender lens through the digital means. So it is not a trivial matter to make sure that all the products and services that these financial institutions and even fintechs are putting out there are actually meeting the needs of women. And one of the big challenges that we see is they're not even tracking the data. So it's critically important. One of the things we focus on is making sure that banks and other financial institutions really understand what the women need. And right now it's even more important for them to do that.
So Wendy, I'm going to jump in now. So thank you for that. Again, really insightful. Great. I'm sure that this will generate a lot of discussion during the panel discussion, panel session. So thank you for that. So I'm just really interested in a very, very quick question for me. So given the fact that a lot of these financial organizations are not tracking, how much support they're giving to women entrepreneurs. So what process do you have in place to monitor them from a reporting perspective?
Thank you very much. Well, at WeFi, we do track all of the programs that we run. We require not only financial institutions, but corporations, technology firms that we work with to disaggregate their data on their clients, suppliers, distributors, so that we can see how many women they're reaching. And the more granular we can get that data, the better, because that really helps us research and understand what the challenges are and what the opportunities are for growing those parts of the business. So we are very keen to see more private sector companies do more to disaggregate their data and to really put a gender lens on product development, supplier development, procurement, and other matters.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. So we've run out of time for you, Wendy, but again, you'll have the opportunity to ask Wendy any questions during the panel session. So please keep the conversation going. Use the hashtag WeDigi2020. Okay, so keep the conversation going. I'm now going to move on to Angela Baker. So I'd like to welcome you, who's going to be talking about how Qualcomm are leveraging mobile technology to deliver successful outcomes. Angela Baker runs corporate responsibility at Qualcomm, the company that transforms how the world connects, computes, and communicates. Baker oversees a portfolio of programs that empower people through technology and training, including the Qualcomm Wireless Reach, a strategic initiative that brings wireless technology to underserved communities globally. To date, Wireless Reach has partnered with over 650 organizations in 119 programs in over 45 countries and has reached over 20 million beneficiaries. The portfolio also includes Qualcomm's numerous STEM engagement programs that are inspiring the inventors of tomorrow, and Qualcomm's sustainability and reporting ESG efforts, which includes the development and publication of the annual Qualcomm Sustainability Report. Previously, she served as an advisor to Secretary Hillary Clinton in the Office of Innovation at the United States Department of State, where she worked on foreign policy goals connected to the 21st century statecraft agenda through bilateral and multilateral engagements with strategic partners on technology and development issues. Welcome, Angela, and over to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that warm welcome. It's always hard to go sort of last at these things, but I think it's actually very appropriate given Qualcomm's role in foundational technologies, and given that all of the ladies that were speaking today talked about digital and the need for digital tools even before COVID, but especially now, as we are in the time of COVID. So just for a quick introduction to Qualcomm, if you're not familiar, Qualcomm, builds foundational technologies. We brought you 3G, 4G. We're unlocking the power of 5G. We understand completely that COVID-19 impacts all of us. And now more than ever, it's important to stay connected, especially as we're all working very hard to social distance and even just to stay connected to loved ones, but also to do work for children to, go to school and that takes a toll on people's broadband and their bandwidth at home, right? So we are committed to continue to working on getting these technologies out like 5G. We're ahead of schedule. And I think it's going to have a large impact, especially for women. But as Olu mentioned, I won't go too much into it, but I run corporate responsibility at Qualcomm. We call it sort of Qualcomm for Good, looking at STEM initiatives, trying to engage, girls and underserved communities traditionally in these roles, get them into these types of careers. And then of course, wireless reach, in which we partner with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, one of our many partners. I think it's really interesting as we look at, because a lot of people have talked about the impacts of COVID on women and everything, I don't want to be redundant, but I do want to talk a little bit of sort of a larger landscape. Research has shown that 5G will potentially unlock $13.2 trillion in global economic value. And we don't even know what that looks like yet. It's sort of like how with 4G, we didn't realize ride sharing would become such a big thing. And now everybody uses Uber or Lyft or whatever is in your community. What is that next thing that will be created on the foundation of 5G? And so we want to ensure that there's obviously a diverse talent workforce, people with diverse backgrounds that are building those technologies. We also know that 5G, or we think, the research shows 5G will create 22 million jobs. And so what we want to make sure that women are also getting into those jobs, right? As we're looking at, wireless reach, that's the program that we run that leverages the technology that we build for social and economic impact globally. We have a large focus on women's entrepreneurship. I think, again, a lot of what was discussed already shows the power of digital and why it's important as we move. Nicola mentioned that the world of work is sort of changing and everybody's home now. Cherie mentioned that you've got your kids who are doing schoolwork, everybody's pulling on broadband. Somebody might be watching it now. It's summer vacation in many parts of the world. Some people might be watching a movie while you're trying to do a webinar, and it's sort of pulling on that streaming. And women are feeling this even more, right? Because they're also having to educate and continue to do their jobs. So I just wanted to pull up a few statistics. These are from the GSMA, from their 2020 Global Gender Report. These are pre-COVID statistics, but certainly I think we are still feeling these impacts now, right? So only 54% of women are using mobile internet. That's 300 million fewer women that are accessing internet on their phone. Sanda, obviously with your previous experience, I'm sure you're very well versed in these statistics, but this has a huge impact, right, for women's, not just women entrepreneurs, but access to, health information, telemedicine, education for your kids. I think it's really important when we look at this data that this is a lost economic opportunity for women, and we need to close this digital divide. We fundamentally believe 5G will do this. It will, increase speeds and have lower latency and also be able to connect more rural communities. And we expect that will happen at a quicker pace than 4G. But I think that we need to get there. I think others on the panel, mentioned that it will unlock more economic opportunity for women. But specifically, I think in the time of COVID, we are seeing that this is even more important than before, to close this digital divide, to get women access, to have them, access to the internet, but also access to things like capital, finance, new markets, and new customers. I love that story, Nicola, you told about the woman who pivoted to sell hot pots. And I think that's just, she's a restaurateur in Thailand, but to sell, to pivot to sell hot pots. And that would have been impossible without digital, right? I just think, it would have been very localized to her community. And so it just really does expand markets and open up new opportunities. And that will become more relevant than ever now in the time of COVID. I did want to touch on our partnership with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women. We've worked with the foundation since 2012 with a lot of success. We started the program together in Malaysia, as Cherie mentioned, and we visited many of the entrepreneurs there. And one of the things that really struck me was that of course, all around the world, people are using their phones the same way we all use our phones for access to many things, right? You use it for work, you use it for personal, for entertainment, and really to see how these women were at that time working with a mentor to help grow their business, but then also use it for finding new ways to do their business, right? We met this baker who learned how to make different cakes that she didn't know how to make before because of YouTube. In the essence of time, I'll just sort of wrap it up here, but just to say that the developer program that we've been doing with the Cherie Blair Foundation has been quite successful. Of course, it's tied to goals 5 and 8 of the UN SDGs, which Sanda talked about. We've reached 8,000 female entrepreneurs through 2 parts of that program. The first is Her Venture app, which gives access to training, digital skills, digital literacy. It's very accessible to women because they can do it at their own time in their own home, which is even more relevant than now because of COVID-19. And we do have plans to work together to continue to scale in Vietnam and to nearby countries. Thanks.
Angela, thank you for that. So that was, again, really insightful. I've got a question for you. So 5G accelerating, and we can see the absolute opportunity that presents. But given that we're supporting women in low and middle income countries, there appears to be still a lack of infrastructure in the provision of communication services. So how do you address this dichotomy between more women entrepreneurs going to digitize their business and the fact that the infrastructure is not there? Does that not place a cap on the ability of their business to move forward?
I definitely think it places a cap. I think the promise of 5G is that we expect that it will roll out quicker than 4G. So in some places, it might even leapfrog if they don't have 4G. There's been research that shows that 1 billion people will be connected by 5G by 2023. That's much quicker than the rollout of 4G that happened previously. I think infrastructure is going to be extremely important here. And we're certainly working as well as a number of mobile operators who are actually delivering on connectivity with governments for this infrastructure build out, because that's going to be clutch. That's imperative. And so we need to ensure that we're not just going to urban areas. Of course, that will be the first place that it's rolled out, but to also take it out further to rural areas and to give access to people where they need it, right? Because it's otherwise it will further, widen the digital divide, and that's in nobody's interest.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you for that. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so again, keep your questions coming. So, as I mentioned before, Angela's also joining the panel, so you'll be able to ask questions then and continue using the hashtag WeDigi2020. So, faced with the biggest global crisis in decades, many women entrepreneurs within low and middle income countries have experienced severe impacts to their business, with heightened risk of business closure due to lockdown measures, restrictions to their supply chains, production or service reduction, plummeting customer demand, restricted access to finance, and even greater pressure in their home, provided by, having to care for children not in school, the sick and the elderly. In response to this challenging environment, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women came together with CW Cambridge Wireless, Synergy Solutions, with contributions from King's College London, SLVC Voice Training in London, the digital marketing agency Rubber Cheese, amongst others, with a common purpose: to build a rapid response program of support for women business owners in low and middle income countries, focused on helping them to combat the effects of COVID-19 whilst preparing them to operate in the new environment. The Cherie Blair Foundation for Women already had deep expertise, having run multiple initiatives that teach financial literacy and business skills for women entrepreneurs, leveraging technology through their Road to Growth program, their massive open online course, and their micro-learning app, Her Venture. This expertise was blended with that of CW Cambridge Wireless, who brought with them their network, co-creation expertise, and digital innovation, as demonstrated through a number of initiatives jointly developed using their strategic partnership model, ranging from the co-design of a connected hairstyling device for GHD, the global leader in hair tools and subsidiary of the third largest beauty company in the world, Coty, through to the development of a COVID-19 early warning system for medical staff. Furthermore, CW Cambridge Wireless brought with them the vision to use technology to positively impact the world through the CW Unplugged initiatives. In addition to making technology more accessible to digitally excluded groups, helping women entrepreneurs globally aligned with this vision. This joint expertise was combined with the support of Synergy Solutions, who has significant experience of helping companies from startups through to high-growth scale-ups and FTSE-listed companies to build and drive digital transformation programs safely, and that of our collaborators from the business and academic sector. The focus for all of the collaborators was to put together an online program of practical interventions for women entrepreneurs to enable them to combat the effects of COVID-19 and continue to economically contribute to their families, communities, and wider economy. Our objective was threefold. Number one, to provide a rapid response and support focused on empowering women entrepreneurs to protect their business during COVID-19 and help their businesses to thrive afterwards by getting the right type of support to them at a grassroots level. The Business Resilience Programme was the result of that collaboration. Number two, to drive digital inclusion. The Business Resilience Programme combines digital training with a purpose-built online learning management platform using gamification methodology. The programme is also accessible through mobile channels. And number three, to remove any financial barriers to access the programme. So an English language version of the Business Resilience Programme was developed and made available free of charge to women entrepreneurs in 70 low and middle income countries. This is just the start. We built and launched the Business Resilience Programme, including the technology platform, within 6 weeks. We believe that there is more work to be done to help women entrepreneurs to adapt the way they do business and move from global economic crisis to recovery by helping them to rebuild their business and fully exploit the opportunities presented to them through digitization. So finally, the digital world into which the global crisis has seen many businesses being pushed presents an exciting opportunity to reach, equip and empower women so that they can play a full and equal part in rebuilding their communities, industries and economies, leveraging already developed knowledge and supported infrastructure. And this will enable us as a community to get even more support to these women business owners that need it the most at this critical time. So again, let's keep the conversation going. Join us by using the hashtag WeDigi2020. And we're now going to move on to the panel discussion. So let's take a look at the questions. So I'm pleased to welcome back Cherie Blair, our host for today, Nicola Mendelsohn, Angela Baker, Sanda Ajambo, Wendy Talaki. So welcome back. And let's check some questions from our panel, from our audience. So this is a question for yourself, Nicola. You spoke about how Facebook allows women to connect. Have you seen an influx in community groups and exclusive networks being established on Facebook since COVID-19?
So thank you for the question. And the answer is a great big yes. Yes, we have an extraordinary number of people. And I can certainly talk from my own even personal experience that a group was created in Northwest London, which is where I live. And COVID-19 support for the elderly and the vulnerable was the name of the group. And within a week, there were 7,000 people in that group, helping people out with their deliveries and their pharmacy shops and things like that. And we saw that all over the world, that sort of behaviors. And we also saw more people spending more time in other groups. So gardening groups, people wanting to know what they could do more if they had window boxes or they had space outside they could tend to, DIY. So yes, there's been a huge amount of activity going on in groups all over the world.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that, Nicola. Okay, so we have a question from Sanda. how can we keep the momentum of business responsibility in the new digital economy?
I mean, it's certainly clear the digital economy is a different economy. And I think that, to keep the momentum just around responsible business is obviously going to require different metrics, different ways in which we look at business and a different understanding of business. I think there's lots of, much as business is pivoting, I also think that organizations such as ourselves and many are actually coming to the realization of what this new digital economy looks like. So we're probably all in a learning and pivoting phase. I think for us, and the way that I'd look at it is the SDGs still remain our North Star in terms of delivery. And if we can accelerate that delivery via digital, as long as we're doing it in a way that is inclusive, that is responsible, and that really drives principle-led business, I generally think we're doing okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sanda. Okay, I have a question here for Wendy. So, a question for Wendy is, when will you go to Turkey? So when will Wi-Fi be available in Turkey? Oh, so you probably need to come off mute, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's hard for us to say because we work through the multilateral development banks. And as I've mentioned, we have about 50 countries that are either currently actively receiving some kind of Wi-Fi programs or will be in the very near future. And very shortly, we will be allocating another 50 million approximately for another round of funding, which will operate in new countries as well as some of the existing countries. In addition, some of the funds that we allocated are already being used in new countries, so it's possible that Wi-Fi will be shortly doing some work in Turkey, but it really is something that we work through our implementing partners. Of course, one of the things that Wi-Fi tries to do is focus about 50% of its funds on low-income and fragile states. So we do have a lot of programming happening in those countries, and middle-income and upper middle-income and lower middle-income countries represent now about 40% of our funding.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Wendy. Okay, another question from the audience. So, how can we ensure women get access to 5G-enabled tech so that they can be competitive in the digital marketplace? That question is for Angela.
Absolutely. So a lot of 5G rollouts are happening right now. They've been happening since last year. So first thing I would urge you to do is check in your country when the rollouts are happening. Many of them are still on track, even though we're in the middle of the pandemic. Many of the governments have still committed to roll out, and then it will continue to roll out in countries, and devices will be available. And many devices that you can get that will be 5G are also compatible with 4G, so you can have it and have it be used compatibility when 5G actually does roll out. That's probably the best way.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that, Angela. Okay, another question here from the audience. So this question is, what can we do to change the burden of childcare defaulting to women, to the woman of the household? I'm going to head that over to Nicola.
Honestly, I think this one is difficult because I think it is something that has happened over generations. I can tell you what I did with my family, all of us, because I don't think it's just on the partner as well. I think if there's children, children can get involved. We sat down and we made a very clear schedule, and everyone kind of signed up to it. And so we literally put it in writing and we stuck it on the fridge and said this was what was going to happen. Now, I'm very aware that my kids are slightly older. I told you about my youngest being 15. I know that that's much more difficult if people are homeschooling, got younger children where you physically have got to be with them all the time. But I think it's, the other bit of advice that my 21-year-old son gave me was, Mum, sometimes you just have to drop your standards a little bit. And actually it was very good advice at the beginning, I have to be honest, because you couldn't maintain the same things that you were doing before as you were doing after with everything that was going on. And so I do hold that in the front of my head. But I think we have to have the honest and open conversations about it. I can see Wendy wants to jump in on it though.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, Nicola. Wendy, what are your thoughts around that?
Olu, I just wanted to mention two things. First, the data that we're seeing is that women now are spending 6 hours a day on those childcare and home domestic aspects, whereas men are spending only 3 hours per day. So and this is among entrepreneurs. So if you're running a business and you're having to double the amount of time that you're spending on domestic care issues than your competitors, it is a significant cost to women. So this is really important. And there will be, all of us have to have our personal solutions at this time of crisis. But one thing I would note is that one of our implementing partners, the International Finance Corporation, has done quite a bit of work on how we can get more childcare embedded in the private sector. So our private sector companies stepping up to make sure that their employees have childcare available either in-house or elsewhere, especially for younger children. So it's very important that the private sector step up. And if they want to have a company that really is equal for women and men, that they think about how childcare is handled.
Brilliant, thank you. I'd be interested to hear from Mrs. Blair. She's had a very, very busy schedule, given her role as a QC and the wife of a former Prime Minister. So what are your thoughts? You're a wonderful example of how we women should be following you also.
I don't know about that, but Nicola, I so identify with lowering your standards. We've been self-isolating along with my 20-year-old son, but also my 3-year-old and 2-year-old grandchildren. And so I've had to be a little more tolerant of a bit more mess. Because we can't do everything, and sometimes it's just easier to leave the toys out. So that's one thing. But the point that Wendy makes, of course, about this burden on women, I hate to use the word burden in some ways, because of course our families are so important to us, and I get such joy out of my grandchildren. But the reality is, of course, that men do not do their equal share. And I think this is very much a generational thing. I do feel that my son, I know my son is doing so much more than his father is. But his father, in turn, did more than his own father did. And so I think that we are seeing both young men wanting to and young women demanding that this share of, this is vital work. How do we keep our households running? How do we support our children? It's not just women's work. And, we need to value this work more, and we need to make time for it. And employers need to understand that that's what makes us human beings, and therefore, in the end, better, more contented, more committed employees or business owners in this case. So I think there's a real opportunity here for what's happened with the COVID crisis, start rethinking the whole way of how we do work. And I think Nicola and some of our other speakers today have mentioned that. And technology makes that so much easier. Technology enables us to do things we couldn't dream of doing before, including things like having this conversation here. And not only we don't have to travel to do that, which saves us all a lot of time, but also being able to communicate with so many more people across the world who wouldn't either been able to afford or have the time to come and listen to us. And that we should embrace that and work out how we do more virtually.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mrs. Blair. I've got a question from Helen McCurchan, CEO at Cherie Blair Foundation for Women. At the foundation, we hear a lot about the impact of stereotypes on women entrepreneurs. I'd love to hear recommendations from any of you on how to reduce these. So I guess, shall we start with yourself, Cherie? So Sandra, and then go around the room quickly.
Listen, I think we have to focus a lot more on, as I said before, making these, tackling these assumptions about what's a woman's role and what's a man's role, and understanding that all of us actually have an obligation, particularly when it comes to caring responsibilities within a family, whether it's younger or older. And on an individual basis, I always say, choose your partner carefully.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Cherie. Sandra, I'm coming over to you. So I'm from Nigeria. You're from Kenya. So I know that there is some real cultural expectations around the role of the woman. So given some of the issues around gender and gender roles, how do you cope? What are your recommendations for dealing with men and managing your household in an African environment?
Well, I would hate to limit my comments to only an African environment. I think I go back to Cherie's comments. It's really about just, what are these roles and how have these roles shifted and changed? I believe that we really need to break down a lot of the unconscious bias barriers that exist around women and gender relations. I also think, I'm not sure who mentioned it, that the truth is that generations of men are becoming a lot more progressive. But I think a lot of this actually just starts with how we parent and what are the values that you set up, that you put through your household, irrespective of where you are. And so I think, one of the biggest opportunities for me to challenge some of these cultural biases is really an inward reflection. Who are you? What do you want for your children and your children's children? I think ignoring it is a saying that I often say. It's the same as sort of, switching on a tap, letting the water flow, and then coming to mop it off afterwards instead of just not switching on the tap at all. I think we're in a lot more of a progressive generation. I think my call to action is really about just really understanding that it really starts with you. A lot of these values really start in the household. And if we can shift them and demonstrate positive messaging, I think we may change the fortunes for the generations.
I'm sure that's true, but
simple, but yeah.
No, but the trouble, I can say that is absolutely true, and I agree with trying to bring up my sons and daughters in that way. But the fact is, those in control at the moment tend to be older men, and we also have to do something to make sure that they also are aware of what's going on. Whether it's reverse mentoring or just sheer pig-headed battering them over the head until they listen. We need to do more about that too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Cherie. I mean, I think that's at the younger sort of contemporary generation. At the leadership level, a lot more role modeling and a lot more just demonstrating the value of shifting these barriers.
Great. Thank you for that. And that's a really nice point to end this panel discussion. I think, hearing what you're saying around challenging some of the cultural biases, we're operating in a much more progressive generation now. Values are incredibly important, and it starts in the home. So really good way to end it. And I'd like to thank you all for, your time today and contributing to the discussion. There is so much that we've learned from you today. So obviously today is the start of a much bigger conversation. Supporting women entrepreneurs to thrive in the digital economy is a complex issue. We can't resolve it alone. After this event, we're going to send you an email setting out just some of the ways that you can get involved. So please continue the conversation. So you've got our various handles there. So you've also got the We Digi 2020 to share your insights and make connections. Get in touch with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women and their team and find out how you can get involved in the 100,000 Women campaign, and read more about the Foundation's award-winning Mentoring Women in Business program. The program provides you and your company with an impactful and rewarding volunteering opportunity you can do anywhere, and it's a perfect way to connect your expertise with women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries. You can also talk to us to learn more about upcoming CW Cambridge Wireless events. In fact, we have an international conference taking place on the 22nd of September. So our details are there so you can reach out to us, or if you require support with your digital technology programs and initiatives, again, you've got our contact details. So thank you to each and every one of our speakers. Thank you to our host, Cherie Blair. Thank you to Sandra Ojambo, Wendy Telecki, Angela Baker. I would also like to thank our partners and supporters, so CW Cambridge Wireless, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, Synergy Solutions. And I would also like to thank you for joining us during this webinar. And finally, a big thank you from me, Oluwarugbu. Let's keep the conversation going. Use the hashtag WeDigi2020. Thank you.